All right, guys. Do you guys know what an acronym is?
I've heard of them before. What does it mean, Mike?
Well, I don't know what it means, but it basically takes a word,
Yeah.
and then you have like letters and stuff that go off of that. Well, today we're going to talk about things in your marriage that you probably shouldn't do, and the acronym is STOP.
If it's Christian, we're talking about it. This is the Mike Charleston Show.
All righty. Well, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we got Chuck here.
I'm
And
back.
Chuck is back, but I thought he was back last week.
Oh, was I?
Yeah. So,
Oh, he's still here?
He's still back. And Sarah's here too.
I'm
so
still
yeah,
here.
yeah, she's
he
still
was
here
here last week.
Yeah, he was. He was. So we got the book of Proverbs we're going to be doing later, and we got a missionary story.
Yes, we do.
Okay, we got a missionary story, and we got Sarah's Song of the Week later. So, but this time we were studying, or not studying, we were looking up what the difference is between an anagram and an acronym, and I forget what an acrostic, as we found out later. But but today it's an acronym. So what we were doing, we were looking up different podcasts, and I listened to different podcasts. Well, we went to Focus on the Family, which I think everybody knows, and if you don't know, you probably should know. But they were interviewing a lady, Katharine Hill.
Katharine Hill.
Katharine Hill, and she wrote a book called something.
Called If You Forget Everything Else, Remember This.
Okay, and they were interviewing her. So
Yeah.
this is not us, but I thought it was interesting enough that we would want to talk about it. And
Yeah.
she comes up with this acronym. So the acronym is S.T.O.P. So
Stop.
stop.
There you go.
So stop doing this in your marriage. So help your marriage, right?
If you want to have a good marriage, these are the things you must not do.
Oh boy, here we go. Yes, so basically that's kind of the concept. So if you can remember, I forgot the book title. If you can't remember anything, remember this.
If you forget everything else, remember this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know anything about the book. I heard her for, a little bit on a show. So I don't know. But I thought it was interesting. I like acronyms. In fact, the message I'm going to be speaking at the camp is an acronym. So anyway.
Yeah, and if you happen to want to go, encourage you to go listen to the podcast. I listened for about 15, 20 minutes today while I was riding, and she's great to listen to because she's from across the pond. She has an English accent, very good English accent.
Yeah.
She is with a kind of a sister organization to focus on the family. I think Caring for the Family or something like that.
Okay.
And
Yep. I didn't catch that. So
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why we have Chuck on the show, because we were trying to get the Southern accent on the show. The accents are cool. So, but he needs to get a deeper one. We need Jeannie on the show.
You think she's got a more Southern accent? Yes.
Oh my goodness! Than you do? Oh my
Yes.
goodness! Yes, hers is thick, very thick. She is from Mississippi.
Yes, she is.
So anyway, these are things that you shouldn't do in your marriage, and I know there's probably 50 things you probably shouldn't do in your marriage, right? But this is a cute little thing. That's what kind of makes so.
Well, and it actually could go for any relationship. But
that's
this
right.
is specifically about marriage, but you could apply it to any relationship.
Well, when I was doing Jeremiah and Abby's wedding, I did an acronym for that, and that was GUM. You remember GUM?
I do.
And because gum kind of, if you have bad breath, just chew some gum, it'll make everything smell better. Well, if your marriage is starting to smell bad, just put in some gum. And do you remember what it was?
Yeah, grace, unconditional love, and mercy.
That's right. That's right. Very good. I like acronyms because knowledge. Thank you. Yes.
Well, they help you remember things.
They do.
So.
They do. So, without any further ado, let's stop.
Number one.
Yes. So
Number one.
The S is the beginning.
S is scoring points or
Scoring points.
keeping score.
Yeah.
Keeping score,
Yeah.
scoring points.
Yeah.
So, growing up, you've heard this many, many times. Usually, it's if a guy does something dumb. And he's trying to make up something, or, oh, you made a compliment to your wife, you're trying to score some points. And I didn't ever think like we were actually literally trying to score points and like I'm outdoing her. But that is kind of the concept, right? Where I'm doing better than you're doing. And so I'm keeping track of all the things I'm doing in the house, outside the house, anything that I'm doing. I'm actually so it's basically keeping track of things I'm doing. And and keeping track of the things you're not doing, right?
Well, and like you did something to irritate me, so I know this might irritate
is this
you.
For real? Oh, okay.
For example, like if you do something to irritate me,
right now,
I'm doing something that might irritate you. But it's like, well, you deserve it because.
What? Wait, I missed something. What happened?
Anyway, so that's, kind of scoring points. It's like, well, you had a turn, now I get a turn.
Right, and that's kind of the concept where someone will, like, they got into trouble doing something like, oh, I got to make up for this, so I got to score some points with my wife. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I hung out with the guys too long, and she's going to be upset, so I got to go buy her some roses or something like that. I don't know. You would hate roses. Actually, you like roses.
I like roses.
I don't like roses.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, what you're doing is you're comparing yourself and how you're doing to how your wife's doing if you're the husband here.
Which is never a good thing.
No, you're trying to see, has she loved me enough for me to love her back?
Right.
Yeah, basically.
It is a kissing book, actually.
It is.
Yes. But that's what it comes down to, right? Is like, I'm doing better than you are, so you don't deserve it. Mm-hmm. And that's not biblical. It's not gracious. It's not godly at all.
Well, and that's not the example of love we have from the Bible.
Oh, of course not.
Because, we're supposed to love whether or not
Right.
you're
love
treating
keeps no
me.
record.
Well, exactly.
Right.
Keeps no record of score. I think that was in the New Living. It was keeps no score.
Keeps no score. Keep no record of wrong.
Yeah. So actually, I do have 1 Corinthians 13, 6 and 7 says, rejoice. I'm talking about charity.
Sure.
Rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things.
Wow, just coming right in the middle of the verse right there.
Yeah, I know. But so instead of rejoicing in iniquity and like, hey, you did something wrong, so, who are you to tell me not to do this? Because look what you did. It's that whole keeping score mentality, and that's exactly what we're told not to do. That's not what love is.
If you do that years and years and years, after 30 years, if it makes it that far, you have a huge divide because, well, he's not keeping his end of the bargain, or she's not keeping her end of the bargain, and that is not the point. That's not the point, because, like you said, there was a quote here. I guess was it, or you just wrote that? I don't remember, but.
This part right here?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I just found that somewhere. It said, keeping score sets you up to fail. Why? Because ultimately you're looking for a reason to withhold. You're measuring and comparing to decide if your spouse has loved enough in order for you to love. And eventually, every spouse is going to fail the test.
Every person is going to fail you at some point, disappoint you, maybe not fail you, but to disappoint you. They're not going to measure up completely every moment of the day, or after years and years of marriage, there's just going to be something. I asked you earlier today, and I was like, I don't know if I want to know the answer to this one, but we all have disappointed someone, especially if you have a long, lengthy relationship with someone. There's going to be some kind of disappointment. Yeah. So anyway, that is...
So it's an old cliche that marriage is not 50-50, it's 100-100.
Right.
Yeah. But it's true. You're what you bring to the marriage is what you're going to get out of it. And if you're not bringing 100% in, you're not going to get 100% out of it. You're only going to get what you're putting into it.
If you put 100% in and they put in 0% in, that's sad. It's tough.
Sad, but it's probably still going to be okay.
Right. You're going to be, but I can't imagine that would ever be the case.
I can't either.
Right. Eventually, someone's going to be pulled down or pulled up. But anyway, give 100%. But okay, that's S. That is
scoring points.
Scoring points. So Chuck had one of his own. He was working on his own acronym. Never mind, we won't go there. Something about keep her happy or something like that.
No,
she's always right. She's always right. No, but it is scoring points. So this is something you shouldn't do is keeping score, right? Yeah. So number 2 or letter
number 2, which
T.
is the letter T, and if you're going with mine, is trust her because she's always right. No. No, we're not going there. This is the thing that you should not do.
Right.
Am I right or am I right?
You're right. The T is for thinking the worst.
Thinking the worst. Now, at the surface level, you're like, well, of course we shouldn't do that. But how many times do we actually do that? Now, I asked you that, and I was like, I don't think of the worst. But there has been times where I assumed the worst. It was, you did this on purpose to hurt me.
Right.
And it wasn't true. It just wasn't true. Instead of assuming the good, so instead of having goodwill, I had bad will, or I don't know the opposite. I assumed the worst. Yeah. And so that is That is a big one. I think that one builds on top of one another. It's like, okay, well, you did this because you stayed after work a little bit later because you didn't want to come home. Well, do you know that for a fact? He had to work late, and you didn't do this because you don't love me. You don't do this. So it's in your own mind, you're creating something that's not even true.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's not even true. And in a relationship, especially a marriage relationship, you should assume the good until they have proven you completely wrong. And I say completely wrong because just because they prove you wrong one time doesn't mean that's it, but completely wrong where they just fail.
Mike.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, the underlying principle here that's being brought down is trust.
Right.
And you can't have a relationship without trust.
Not without trust. That is for sure. And so I don't know. Have I ever disappointed you? And we're not going to answer that question right now. Okay.
Moving right along.
Have you ever thought the worst? And so it happens at times.
Yeah.
That's why we need to be aware of it when it happens. It's like, even if I've given you a reason to think of the worst, it's you don't know what that person's been going through. Maybe they are struggling with something and they're trying, but by that spouse just pounding them is not going to help. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, if you don't believe in me, then it's all over. It's just I'm done. I quit. And so that's a sad thing.
I like the next point of the point here under this is if how do you correct this? If your tendency is to think the worst, then what's the thing to fix it?
This is a tough one because I'll admit, once you're going down that negative road, it's tough to get out of that. But I'm guessing you're going with the gratitude.
Yeah.
Yes. To have an attitude of gratitude.
Yeah. You got to retrain your thoughts.
So how do you do that practically?
Which is very hard.
Okay, so practically, how does that look?
Well, I think, for example, if a woman's irritated because her husband works late and he just keeps coming home late, you can at least be thankful that he's working.
Right.
He's working hard, he's very diligent about his work, and maybe that bothers you because you'd rather him be home reading to the kids or whatever you want. But it's instead give thanks, thanks that you got the money, that you're what you need is provided for because he does a great job providing, even though maybe you think he takes that a step too far. But it's you can.
Yeah, we're not saying ignore the issues.
Right.
We'll get into that later. But it's be thankful for something with this issue. There's not everything is negative.
In general, be thankful.
Yes.
I know
that is the goal.
Jeannie's got a book of I think her goal's 1,000 things, where she's writing down things that she's thankful for, just to help her be thankful. And have an attitude of gratitude.
Absolutely.
You do it. That's impressive to me. I don't know if I could sit there and
1,000?
do that, but I think it's 1,000. No, not at one time. It's just
that'd be
in the
tough.
book.
That'd be tough.
Yeah.
But we watched a movie one time where this guy was writing something, and he's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm writing 10 things I'm thankful for every morning." And he's like, "You can be thankful for something."
Yeah.
And he was homeless. Anyway, what was the other point on there?
I have that it can come from the need to over control.
Over control.
Yeah. Trying to take the lead, trying to control. So it's I think the worst because I don't want you doing something and I'm trying to get you to stop doing whatever.
It sounds very specific. You're really thinking about something about me.
No, I'm not thinking anything about you. But I'm just saying, I think sometimes we think maybe husbands sometimes with their wives, they go out and do all the shopping and they have a need to control more of that. And so they think, oh, she's just wasting our money. I could see husbands doing that.
Yeah.
So
it comes down to trust, and we have a Bible verse for this one. This one we use quite a bit on our show. So if you're playing along on the radio, you could guess it. It is Philippians 4:8.
Says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things.
Think on these things. Now, I get it. It can be tough at times, especially in a relationship that's starting to go down. Well, to get it better, you have to reverse it. You have to get it better. And thinking on these things, and you say, well, my husband or my wife, they haven't given me things to be thankful for. That's not true. There is plenty of things to be thankful for. There might be tough times, and there might be things that are current that are really hard, but you can always be thankful for something. You can.
Yeah.
All right, so we got S and T.
We got S, scoring points.
Yep.
T, thinking the worst.
Yep.
The third thing that you should not do if you want to have a good marriage is opting out.
Opting out. Well, okay.
is
The ultimate opting out is leaving, obviously.
Yeah.
But
Right.
so I was like clarifying this because I'm kind of guilty on this one, but not really like in our relationship. But I tend to push things further down the road. You know, I said, I am quite okay kicking the can. So if there is an issue in our life that we need to deal with,
I'll think about it.
yes.
Oh, that's the worst.
Can I think about it?
That is the worst. It's
Yes.
like, I mean, I'm fine with you thinking about it, but like,
Isn't that word?
Yes.
can we like
That's
have
what you think it means.
exactly? Can we like have a deadline or something? Like you'll think about it today and tomorrow.
Basically,
we'll talk
when I
about
say I
it?
think about it, I'm like, no,
Right.
not happening right now.
Yeah.
Think
But-
about it as the exit strategy.
But you, yes, exactly. But you were saying how you struggle with this too, and which is kind of true because if there is a conflict of some sort, you don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, I'd rather just let it go and like give it to God and like, okay, I'm frustrated about this, but I don't need to make an issue out of it. And I can
Right.
just, trust God's going to work in your life and it'll all be okay. And sometimes that's probably the best thing to do.
If it's a little things, sure, you can.
Right.
Grace is good, but in a relationship, especially in a marriage relationship where you are sharing your lives and you're living together and you have to deal with things, there's going to be things that come up. We're not talking these things are always big. It can be
Right.
just very simple things that are starting to irritate you or get on your nerves for some reason. And is it okay to express that? And so opting out is like, I don't want to deal with these issues. We're just going to close our eyes and pretend they don't exist. Well, that doesn't make anything go away. It's still there. Just
Right.
because that's what drug addicts do. They want to get away from the problem, but then when they're coming off their high, the problems are there and most likely worse. So it's like we have to deal with we can't be afraid of dealing with the issues.
No, that goes to the idea of being able to have the communication
Yep.
that's necessary
Yeah.
without the high level of emotion that you may bring to it. You
Sure.
know, if you're at a point where you can't say it in a way that you can just calmly talk about it, then maybe you need to wait a while.
Right. Is that opting out? Not necessarily. Right.
The older I've gotten, the longer I've lived, the more I realize that if you put a problem to the side and see if it's going to go away, it's probably not.
No, it
That
doesn't.
hardly ever works. It's
Hardly
better
ever.
to address it and deal with it, but we have to be able to do it in such a way that we still realize, we're showing love, we're being compassionate, we're being understanding.
Yep.
We're not doing it in such a way that's like, well, you're not listening to me. You need to pay attention.
Yes.
You're not doing this. It's how we go about it.
Yeah.
But
Which is a huge issue. I feel like resolving conflict. I mean, there's books and books and
There's
books
plenty
written
of-
on
yeah.
it. There's all sorts of stuff because it's difficult. Like, how do we fight and still love each other?
Right, right.
Or argue or whatever you want to discuss. I mean,
or
whatever you want to
whatever, right.
call it. But we have a difference of opinion, and so somehow we're going to have to deal with this.
Yeah, we are, and we can't be afraid to express how we feel about certain things. Now, there can be some people that are overly sensitive that want to bring up everything, and I think that might be a little bad on the other side. Like some things, just let it go. But if it is really bugging you, we're not talking about an over controlling freak here that wants to control everything here.
I leave the toothbrush out. Maybe you just kind of
Right,
overlook it.
right? Or do it yourself. Put it away. It just if it bugs you that much. But if it truly does bug you, don't be afraid to mention it and just talk about it. And you don't have to do it in a sarcastic way or in a demeaning way, as we're going to talk about later. And
Well, I mean, that could be a problem in itself, that maybe like if you think I'm overly sensitive and so it's like, okay, you talk to me about this and this and this, and maybe now you want to talk to me that bothers you that I'm so oversensitive,
Right.
Well, I mean, there could come a time for that where I need to realize, okay, yeah, maybe I'm like too particular about everything and
But
I need to be
basically-
able to let things slide.
yeah, basically, we have to not be afraid of expressing our opinions on certain things. And so, because we're in a relationship, even with friends, we do this with friends. I'm probably a lot more gracious with my friends, like whatever, just he said something, I'm not even going to go there. I don't care because it's not worth, I'm not going home with him. We're
Right.
not,
Yeah.
but with my wife, with you,
That was my P.
What was that?
That was my P that I was going to use
Okay.
for pick your battles.
Oh,
but
pick your
we're not
battles,
there
right.
either now.
Well, so with my wife though, we do go home. We do wake up the next day, and the problem is still there. So I think that is a little bit more where the issues are a little bit more important. And so I'm not going to just like, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. You matter. So therefore, I should opt in and try to see what's important in your life.
Yeah.
And so instead
Another
of opting
way
out,
that we see opting out is that if you're married for a period of time, you have children, and you grow into this routine in your marriage where most of your conversation is about the family and the children.
Yeah, sure.
And you're focused on the children and what's going on there, and you tend to just fall into a habit. If that's what you talk about, that's what you deal with. And you kind of opt out.
Yeah.
You're not meaning to, but you're opting out on the relationship between the husband and the wife.
That's
and
a
you
big
need to
problem.
be aware that that's very easy to happen whenever all the circumstances are going on in the world, and pay attention to the fact that you need to, as a friend of mine used to say, I need to take her out of a role of being a mother and put her back in a role of being a wife for a while.
Yep.
And guys, that's our responsibility.
Absolutely.
Put it on my shoulders.
And that's why a lot of people, 20 years go by, 30 years, and then they get divorced, and you're like, what happened? Well, because the kids got out of the house, and then they were like, I don't like you. What happened?
I don't know you.
Right. I don't know you.
Yeah,
and it's like, what happened? Because our focus was so much on because there's a lot of fires that need to be put out. And who are you going to pick up right now? You want to go do this and pick them up. And then, so it's a lot of information and duty type things, but we actually aren't communicating. We're not really
so
talking.
What was Katharine, was that her name? The lady who wrote the books? That's one of the things she mentioned. One of the highest growing populations of divorce are empty nesters.
Yeah, I can believe it. I can believe it.
Yeah.
Which is really sad. You think we made it that far, like you're 20, 30 years in. Why? But I think that's exactly the case is, we just get busy with kids and don't take time for us.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay, so we are S.T.O. We're at S.T.O.
Yes.
So we need one more letter.
One more letter. That would be the letter P.
Yes.
Putting down.
Yes. Now, this one is a tough one for me, and not so much for my wife, but because I like to at work, and I like to josh with people. I like to mess with them and just have fun with them. And the way I put it, there's one guy at work that's a little sensitive, and I said, man, if I'm putting you down or something like that in a joking way, that means I accept you as like family because I'm having fun with you. But I think there's a difference between that and then like putting down. And so there's constant belittling and constant sarcasm and stuff like that. Body language, I'm guilty. I have bad body language sometimes. You'll say something and I'll be like, and I'm like, it's not necessarily towards you, but it is like, do you want to go to this event? I'm like, she already knows what I don't want to do. But the belittling and the sarcasm, which you were a queen of years and years ago.
I was.
When I first met you, you are very, very, very sarcastic. You might not know that.
I didn't know that.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, she was very sarcastic. That's what I loved about her. Yeah. Sarcasm. No, but it's great when it wasn't toward me. But no, the belittling and sarcasm in a marriage, you're constantly around each other, and the constant belittling or picking, and you don't do this right. You never do this. You never. That's discouraging.
Yeah, it's like, can I do anything right?
Right.
Yeah.
Another take on that is, and I try not to do this. Sometimes I probably mess up, but you never should correct your spouse in front of the children.
Interesting.
That's just. It's not good, We all mess up. We all say things that are wrong. I think I said something wrong. Raised my voice on the way here today, but it's not good to correct your spouse in front of the children because they need to see you as a united front. They need to see that y'all have it together, regardless what may. You're together. That's something that's security for them, and they know that you have their best interest in mind.
That is true. However, and I'm not making excuses for this, but if and when that happens in front of the kids, I think it's good for them to see good conflict resolution and not let it escalate.
True. That's true.
Not escalate to where you're yelling and screaming at each other. And once you realize what you're doing, stop it. S.T.O.P. Stop and correct it, and be like, oh, you know what? I was wrong. I shouldn't be saying that, or something like that. And I know in the heat of the moment, you're like, yeah, who does that? Well, you can, if you just stop and be like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not belittling you. I'm not going to put you down. My body language sags, because we're on a trip and I have to go hiking and everyone knows my love of hiking. It's not there. But yeah, words, right?
Yeah, words. I mean, James talks about taming the tongue, and so if you could tame your tongue perfectly, you'd be a perfect man. So I mean, that's tough. But Proverbs 18:21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof." So our words really can hurt.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt is an absolute lie.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Most people, I think, would rather be hit than be cut with words by a loved one.
Yeah.
Yeah, sticks and stones could break my bones, but words will really crush me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's more what it's like. It really hurts.
It really does. And we were talking about this with my kids. You know, if some stranger came up and just said something terrible to me, I'm like, whatever, dude. Yeah. Because I'm like, well, that's your problem. But if my kids or my wife says it, it's like a betrayal and it means more because of the relationship. Yeah. So think about that. Because of the relationship that we have, whether it's through marriage or kids or, whatever it is, and then those words are coming out, it hits right there. It sticks because of the relationship, it means more. And so it means more even when you're saying bad things. Yeah. And we've all, look, maybe we haven't all, but I have been guilty in the past and of not watching my tongue and saying something sharp to my kids, and totally regretting it, in the moment. And but do I actually go back and correct it? Maybe not always. But you should. These things hurt.
Yeah.
So putting down sarcasm. Can you give an example of sarcasm, babe?
No.
Yeah, she doesn't. She's not going to go. I shouldn't tempt her.
Why is she the smart?
Yeah, she's smart. Yeah, good call.
So I'm curious, which one do you guys think is the most difficult?
Most difficult? Mm-hmm. Most difficult to stop?
Yeah.
The most difficult to stop or the... Okay, so I guess I go the other way. The most likely to fall into?
Yes.
Okay, sure.
Opting out's the most easiest to fall into.
Well.
I said the same, probably, just because it's easier not to deal with an issue than to deal with it. It's like, well, maybe if we just let it go the next day, it'll just go away. And we know it doesn't. No. 95% of the time it doesn't, and we have to deal with it anyways. But me and Chuck probably are like that in a lot of ways in life too. Yeah. We're not as aggressive as Larry. I don't know. I don't know how Larry is. Am I putting down Larry? No, I don't know.
Larry?
What about you, babe?
What are you doing?
I think I would say opting out too, just because I like to avoid any type of...
Well, that's great. For our house, we just both avoid.
Well, I just want peace, and I want, I want everybody to be happy, and so...
Well, no, and it's like, we're not even talking about these great big arguments, because I could count, how many times on our hands we've had a big disagreement in our 25 years. Not many. Yeah. But there's little things that come up, and if those little things don't get taken care of, they can become big things. Yeah. And that is the one thing that we have done throughout our marriage is definitely communicate. And that's
one of the greatest principles I learned from my father-in-law, my time that I worked with him on the farm. He was very good about taking care of the little things.
Okay.
In the business, in the farm.
Oh, sure.
Everything he had pretty much worked, because if something small broke, he fixed it.
Yep.
I would be more like, I'll get around to that one. It's not as important, and it just snowballs.
Yep.
But you take care of the little things, and you don't get the big things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look at my house. We got.
Yeah, me too.
So anyway, that is stop. So for your relationships, whether it's with your spouse or even with kids, or things like that.
If you want more on it, you can go read Katharine Hill's book. If you forget everything else, remember this.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
How well do you know your Bible?
All right, we are chugging right along, and we are now in the book of Proverbs, the book of wisdom, the wisdom book. And this one's difficult to do because the Psalms and Proverbs are both like all the other books. There's a story to it. There's a storyline to it, and this happened and this happened. Like nothing happens in this book.
No.
It's just a bunch of Proverbs.
It is a bunch of Proverbs. It's supposedly Solomon who wrote most of Proverbs.
Right.
He wrote over 3,000 Proverbs.
3,000
and so there are only
Proverbs.
800 in this book. So what happened to the others?
Well, how do we know that? Who said that?
People.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Solomon.
Actually, I think it's in Kings. There was a reference to Kings about the thousands of Proverbs that he wrote. I didn't write the reference
nice.
down. But anyway, it is supposedly in the Bible. But anyway, so but Proverbs is kind of,
Everyone loves Proverbs.
everybody does love
Even
Proverbs.
if you go to a fortune cookie or a Chinese restaurant and get a fortune cookie, and there's a proverb from, I don't know, some ancient Chinese proverb, and like he who sits, I don't know. But anyway, everyone likes Proverbs,
Yeah.
and they are, especially the ones here in Scripture, are good things to live by.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
they're absolutely truth. And a lot of them can be common sense. You'd be like, well, okay, that is probably true. Like a lot of them are if this happens, this is going to happen. And you could see that and be like,
Right.
yes, if you know anything about human history, that is absolutely true.
Yeah.
But so it's hard to break down Proverbs where like, just go read it. I know like for our family, we used to, I don't know how much we do it nowadays, but a proverb.
For years, we would read a proverb of the day,
Right.
and maybe not always every year, but
Right.
we've been through it a lot of times. So when I read through Proverbs, it's just like because we would read through it, but we'd always stop and like, I'd explain things or they'd ask a question. And so we would discuss like, well, why would it say that? Or why would it say that? And so we've had many discussions
Sure.
over each chapter of the book of Proverbs. And so there's a lot of meaning there and a lot of great stuff to live by for sure.
Sure.
So, but I will say Proverbs is difficult to memorize. And
Interesting. I know people who memorize Proverbs, like seems like that's the only thing they memorize.
okay, well, an individual proverb is not hard to memorize.
I see what you're saying.
But
Yes.
to memorize, like in Bible, they'll
chapter?
have a chapter, and because there's no story, there's not always a theme. There are a few themes in Proverbs, but in general, it just goes from one thought to another thought and another
Right.
thought, and it's like, okay, next.
Yeah,
is
there's
what?
like two verses that will reinforce what he just said, or something like that, or even maybe four, where one will come back, but on the fourth verse and stuff. So there might be a theme like for that
Sometimes.
six verses or so, but
Right.
like the whole chapter, I see what you mean. Like it's just a list of Proverbs.
Proverbs, right?
Right.
Yeah. So there is an interesting chapter, though,
There
and that
is.
would be chapter 31.
Whoa, that's what you want to
many
go
people-
to. Yeah, because that's the perfect woman, right?
Supposedly, that's
The
what
Proverbs
every
30.
woman's
But
trying to live
that's not the
up
interesting
to.
part of it, though. No,
No, well, I mean, it is interesting.
It is, of course, it's interesting.
But I found out today that it actually includes an acrostic of 22 verses.
So an acrostic being, we were just talking about the difference between an anagram and an acronym.
Right.
But an acrostic, so they kind of like in Psalms 119,
Right.
where in Psalm 119 they take every letter of the alphabet, and now that's not included in the psalm, so it's like a header
Right.
of the psalm. So the aleph, the beth, the talif, all the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and then there's a psalm or a section of Psalm 119 that is with that Hebrew letter.
Right.
Well, in Proverbs 31, 10 verses 10 through 31, it's an acrostic, which
Right.
is kind of like an anagram, I guess, or acronym.
Acronym, and it goes through the whole Hebrew alphabet.
Right. Each verse represents. It goes through. They don't have A, B, and C, but you know what I mean. They go through the beginning to the end of their
It has
alphabet.
22 verses in a row that goes through the 22 letters
Right.
of the Hebrew alphabet. And I
Yeah.
thought, wow, and it's something that we miss because I don't read Hebrew. And so until it was
because most
pointed
of the
out, I'm like,
verses
I
start
don't-
with she,
Right.
but
yeah,
not in
because,
Hebrew.
Because
Right.
it's all about the virtuous woman. And so that
Right.
section there is actually in Hebrew. It was an acronym, and they could see the whole alphabet as if we would put A, B, C, D, and then like
Yep.
she's this, this,
Right.
this. Anyway, I thought, wow, that's really cool. I like finding
Yeah,
things
that's
like
a neat
that.
little nugget that you can find in Proverbs. So I asked you earlier in the week, when we were going through Psalms, everyone has a favorite psalm, like, oh, I really like Psalm 91 or Psalm 1 or Psalm 150, or even whatever Psalm 145 or whatever it is your favorite psalm is, and you didn't have one because you have a lot that you like. And I'm like, that's not playing the game. But your favorite proverb is like, well, I asked myself that. I'm like, I don't know. I guess it would have to be, I don't know if it's Proverbs 3, 4, and 5, 3, 4 through 5.
5, 6, and 7.
5, 6, and 7. I knew it was in a row there.
Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths.
Yes,
and
that
then,
one.
Yeah. I say sometimes I would have thought maybe that's my favorite, and then it became so. Well, maybe it was always popular, but as I grew up, I realized how popular that one was. But I love that one. But I will say probably one we hear a lot would be 22:6.
Yes, train up a child in the way he should go. This one is every homeschooler's favorite one.
Right. Everybody knows that one. Right. Or Proverbs 17:17. A friend loveth at all times. Heard that one before?
Yes, I've heard that one.
And then Proverbs 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction.
That's actually a number of times where
it's multiple times in there.
Fear is our wisdom. No, what was it?
The fear of the Lord is the
fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, is in there a number of times.
Yeah. And then Proverbs 14:12, there is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof.
I just quoted that yesterday. So,
See?
Yep.
And then this is one of my personal favorites.
Okay, I'm curious.
Proverbs 17:22, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones.
And we would sing the song all the time with the kids.
Yes. So if any of my kids are listening, the song's going through your head,
yes.
I know, and I'd love to sing it, but not right now. And then Proverbs 6:16, I feel like is pretty familiar, at least to me. There's these 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him.
Another song.
And maybe that's more from the song, but and then this one you hear a lot.
A soft answer.
16:18, pride goeth before destruction, and an haughty spirit before a fall.
Yeah, that one's up there.
I mean, everybody knows pride goeth before a fall.
Yes,
so.
yes.
And then the other one I have is Proverbs 15:1, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger.
Yes.
So, I mean, you can see how each one of these, like you could, if you're with your kids, you could have a whole little lesson about it and talk about it and whatever.
Yeah. And there's plenty of people who have done that.
Yeah. And there's many, many more. I mean, there's a lot of, like Bible teaching for kids through Proverbs because, hey, these are all things that this is why.
And it brings up interesting subjects that you can delve into. And it just, when you get to the strange woman, just be prepared.
Yeah.
And, but these are important things to discuss with your kids because there's a lot of pitfalls in this world and we don't think about it. And when you start reading the Proverbs, it's just like, well, these are true things. Like if those that do these things are going to be blessed. Mm-hmm. And if you do foolish things, you're going to, I was just trying to think of the one proverb where you're when you're borrowing money, basically, and you're slave to the lender, and you look at that one, and people can justify that, but it is true. It is absolutely true. So we have to, these are things that are. I know a lot of people would say, well, are these guarantees, or is it just a probability? It's probably going to happen, but it's not a guarantee. And so these are proverbs. So these are things that, like you said, it's not guaranteed every single moment, but in the long run, these things are true.
Yeah. Well, I read somewhere that somebody was saying they're not promises, they're principles. And I'm like, I don't know what you think of that, but I'm like, I could see that. And I mean, what I do like about it is, definitely for all of us, but even, since I'm a homeschool mom, it's like talking a lot about hard work, talking a lot about friendship, how to be a good friend.
Those are very practical things.
Yeah, it has a lot of practical stuff.
I think that's why people like Proverbs, because it is practical.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, but I think it's a great book. I think it's a great thing if you haven't done the read aloud with your kids and just go through and talk about it, and like sometimes we'll just read a chapter and then I'll say, okay, everybody pick out one that you liked, and I'll be like, well, what stuck out to you or why'd you like that one? And so then we would just talk about it.
Just talk about it. It's cool. It's a good conversation starter, that's for sure.
It is.
The book of Proverbs, the book of wisdom, and what did we just say at the end? It could be called it doesn't matter. Okay. But it's the book of wisdom. So anyway, go check it out. It's 31. So if you do one a day, every other month, you could go through the whole book.
Yep.
Missionary Stories with Chuck.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot I needed to come in there. So, yes.
You were getting into the music?
But yeah, I don't know what I was doing. But anyway, this is Missionary Stories with Chuck. And so this story, I think most of us know. In fact,
I would think so.
I went online a long time ago when eBay first came out, and I bought a book from this fella that was signed from him or something like
Really?
that. And it's an
very old.
book. Yeah, I'll have to show you that.
Yeah, I would like to see it. That's
so
pretty cool.
I don't know if it was signed by him or
I'll have to
whatever.
look, but it's really old.
But I got a pretty cheap price on eBay, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool."
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a very well known missionary.
Sure.
Probably many of you have read his work in some form or another. Really
Yeah.
good. It's one of those action adventure missionaries.
Yes, very popular saying. As he meets with this other guy. Anyway,
It
go
won't
ahead.
be in the story.
It's not in the story?
No, it's not in the story. So sorry.
Well, okay. Yes.
All right, so we're reading again from Missionary Stories with the Millers. I got my book out and my glasses on, and this is Chief Sichelli's daughter.
Chief Sichelli. That is not what it's about, but Chief Sichelli's.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's the king's own hut. Mabawi pointed to a huge cone-shaped building made of thatch. David Livingston, the quiet, slender missionary,
We gave it away already.
Yeah, it's right there.
Already.
You don't get it right there. Thought about actually taking that out.
Okay,
I
great.
did, but I said, I'm going to go with it. David Livingstone, the quiet, slender missionary, stood at his black friend's shoulder. Silently, he studied the capital city of Chief Sichelli in Central Africa. The common people's huts were uniform in size and laid out in orderly patterns, the grass roof shining gold and yellow in the sunlight. The earthen streets were swept clean and beaten hard by the passage of many bare feet. "Here come the guards to meet us," David exclaimed. A faint prickle of tension was mixed with his excitement. "Brother, shall we pray?" he said softly to Mabawi. Briefly, both men bowed their heads as they stood on the trail. "Thank you, Lord, for moving Chief Sichelli to send for us," David prayed. "Help us to win him into your kingdom." A dozen muscular guards with towering plumed headdresses and sharp tasseled spears escorted the two Christians into the village. Their black faces were somber, and as David walked down the street between the rows of huts, he realized that something was wrong here.
You think?
"Why are the people so sad?" he asked. "The chief's only child is dying," came the African's reply. "I'm a doctor," David stated. "Take me to Chief Sichelli quickly, and perhaps I will be able to help." There were 3 small fires burning before the chief's hut, and near the middle one squatted the weird, wrinkled figure of the witch doctor. He rocked back and forth and muttered a low chant between his toothless gums. Strange decorations hung from strings all around his neck, waist, and arms. Dried snake skins, a leopard's claw, the skull of a dead monkey, and some crocodile teeth. Now he took a pinch of dried herbs from a small antelope horn cup and threw them into his boiling pot without looking at the visitors. "Hail, Sichelli, great elephant of the Botswana," David and Mabawi politely called out the correct greeting as they approached the chief. Chief Sichelli rose from his wooden throne in the doorway of his hut. His face, under headdress of blue heron plumes, was stern, and his eyes were troubled. "I have sent for you, White Doctor," he announced, "because I have heard that you are skilled in healing. I command you to give my daughter some medicine."
Ooh, it's not good when he commands. Yikes. Okay.
"I'll be glad to do whatever I can," David answered simply. "But it is God in heaven who does the healing. Where is your daughter?" The witch doctor jumped to his feet and glared resentfully at David. "Oh, great Chief Sichelli," he whined. "I'm ready to give your daughter my strongest medicine. We do not need any help from this foreigner. If he touches your daughter, she will surely die." An expression of fear flitted across the face of Sichelli, but he stood firm. "Come," he told David, and the missionary doctor followed him into the big hut. As David's eyes adjusted to the dim light inside, he could see the form of a little girl lying on a rug made of leopard skins. Her knees were drawn up to her belly, and she moaned in pain as her mother and several other women stood helplessly by. Any idea what was wrong with her?
I think this happened to me the other night. I was moaning in pain, and no, I don't know.
Knees drawn up
Stomach thing?
Knees drawn up in your belly, and moaning in pain usually means appendix.
That's what I was guessing.
Yeah, that's exactly. Where does it hurt, Princess? David asked softly. With gentle hands, he felt her feverish head and examined the sore stomach. Then he turned to Chief Shichelli. Her appendix is infected, he told the father. It is a small thing inside her belly that has become bad. Now I must cut her belly and remove the appendix quickly before it bursts open.
How are you going to
and
explain
kills
that to
her.
him? We understand that over here, but
Not there. Mm-mm. See, and David opened the pouch of medical equipment he always carried. Here, I have a small, sharp knife. And with this medicine, he held up a tiny bottle, I will put her to sleep so she will feel no pain. Then I will close the hole in her side with these. He held up a needle and thread. And in a few days, she will be well again. The women gasped at the sight of the knife and began to wail and cry. Chief Shichelli frowned. If you kill my child, I will kill you, he growled.
What year was this?
Ooh, I don't know.
This is like the 30s,
At the
right?
end, I
40s?
think
Let's
it
see,
might
let me
say,
flip over
it'll
there
have a
real
date.
quick. 33 years he spent there, mid 1800s.
Okay, so yeah, we're talking even for our standards.
Yeah.
This is going to be tough. Okay, yeah. So the surgery in the jungle here.
If I don't cut out the bad thing, she will die, David pleaded. Seeing that Shichelli was wavering, he added, if she dies, I die too. All right? Slowly, the chief nodded his head in a gesture of agreement. Do the thing quickly, he whispered harshly. David stepped out of the hut into the blinding sunlight once more and beckoned to Mabawe. My instruments must be cleansed in hot water, he told his companion. While they are boiling, let us pray. Are you sure you should take this chance? Mabawe questioned softly in English. If you fail, we will be killed like dogs. I believe this opportunity is from the Lord, David replied confidently. With his help, the operation will succeed. Then Shichelli's tribe will be open to the gospel at last. Together, the men knelt beside the fire. Hundreds of curious eyes were upon them as David and Mabawe bowed their heads. Almighty Lord God, David prayed, give my hands the skill to do this operation successfully. Please grant healing to the daughter of Shichelli, that all his people may know you are the one true God. The Africans crowded in closely around David, bent over his little patient. Carefully, he gave her just 2 drops of laudanum from the small bottle, then picked up his sharp knife. Quickly, he cut a small gash deep into the child's belly and removed the diseased appendix. Just in time, he murmured to Mabawe. This thing was ready to burst.
That would have been good.
He closed the cut he had made and bandaged it lightly, then felt the little girl's pulse. I have finished, he said to Chief Shichelli. The child will sleep a while longer. When she awakens, we will know how she is. One by one, the curious onlookers left the hut to take their own naps in the heat of the day. Chief Shichelli and his wife squatted on one side of their sleeping daughter while David kept watch at the other side. They did not speak. And as David sat silently, his mind ran back over the events that had brought him here to this place. He thought of his boyhood in Scotland. His parents had been so poor that David had needed to leave school and go into a factory to work at the age of 10. From 6 in the morning until 8 at night, he had worked in a hot room in a spinning mill, mending broken places in the cotton ropes. He had been responsible to watch 160 ropes at once and often needed to walk more than 20 miles a day as he hurried around and around the whirring machines.
Think his Fitbit was busy?
In every spare moment, he had read all the books he could, especially books about science and travel in other countries. At the age of 20, he had decided to become a missionary doctor. David raised his head now and looked at the sleeping girl, daughter of an important chief. Shichelli had been angry and threatening toward the Christian missionaries until now. Would the operation save his daughter's life and open his tribe's heart to the gospel of Jesus? David gently counted the heartbeats once more as they passed through the child's limp wrist. All seemed to be well, and he sat back again with closed eyes to rest and wait. Also, to remember another time when his courage had been tested by great danger. Lions had been terrorizing a little African village close to the mission, and the people had appealed to David for help. If we can kill one of them, the rest of them will leave the area, they told the missionary. Will you come with us? David had agreed, and that night the men formed a circle. David and Mabawe had guns, the others held spears.
I'll take my chances with the guns.
Everyone was silent and tense as the clouds drifted back and forth in front of the moon. Lions had crept toward the cattle pens, then charging the ring of men. David had fired at a lion, then reached down to reload his gun. Suddenly, Mabawi shouted a warning. Out of the darkness, the wounded lion rose up right in front of David. It reared over him like a cat pouncing upon a mouse, with a ruff of its enormous mane fully erect. In the light of the flaming torches, its eyes glowed a bright, ferocious gold. The lion opened its jaws and roared an ear-shattering gust of sound. David's own yell was lost in the roaring of the enraged animal. He had one glimpse of long, white, cruel fangs in the gaping red mouth, and then the charging beast's jaws closed upon David's shoulder. Growling horribly, the 400-pound lion shook the missionary as a dog shakes a rat. The remaining lions broke through the circle of screaming men and vanished into the darkness, and Mabawi fired his gun into the air. Instantly, the lion that was attacking David dropped him and sprang at Mabawi instead, only to fall dead at last on the bloody sand. David smiled, remembering. That time the doctor had to have the operation himself, he thought. He had needed to give instruction to the African Christians as they sewed up his wounds and set the splintered bones in his shoulder.
So he had to direct them
to perform the operation
on himself.
That's
I've heard of doctors doing own surgery on themselves,
but God kept me alive to work for Him, David mused, and now I am trusting God to keep this child alive too. So Shelley's daughter stirred on the leopard skin rug, and her eyes fluttered open. "Mother?" she asked weakly. "Father, I'm thirsty." David felt her forehead. It was cool. Her heartbeat was strong and steady. There was gladness in David's eyes as they met the eyes of Chief Secheli. "Give thanks to God," he said triumphantly. "Your daughter will live." The chief rose to his feet. "Come," he told David in a husky voice. "I will have my servants bring you food. After we have eaten, then you shall tell me all about your God. I am ready to listen." So David Livingstone was one of the grandest missionary heroes of all time. He spent 33 years in Africa as a pioneer explorer, traveling many thousands of miles in places where no white man had ever been before. Africa in those days, the mid-1800s, was called the Dark Continent because no one had ever made any maps of it or had any knowledge of its geography. David Livingstone blazed the trail, opening the country to Christianity. Many new mission stations were later planted all through the region of Africa where David had explored. Chief Secheli did believe on the Lord and was converted and baptized. As soon as possible, he learned to read and became a missionary to his own people. Mabawe, who saved David from the lion, was a close friend of David's for the rest of his life. He also was an able preacher who brought many of his people to Christ.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, David Livingstone. It's him and I guess Dr. Watson went out to go find him. And he's in the middle of Africa, and here's this only white guy. And so that's when he says, Dr. Livingstone, I presume.
That's right.
So that is Dr. Livingstone. And there's plenty of books written on him.
Yeah.
And it's, I'll have to find that book.
Yeah, I'd like to see that one.
I forget, or maybe it was about him. Was it about him? I forget.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It was I'll have to figure. Anyway, that is Dr. Livingstone.
Music with Sarah.
What song do you like?
Alrighty, so this is the song of the week, and we had a little discussion talking about S.T.O.P. So we had a lively discussion. Not really. We were discussing whether we already did this one or not.
Which I do keep track of the ones that I've done.
Yes, if you want to check them out, go to Spotify. You can go to Sarah's Spotify playlist. I don't know how you do that on Spotify. I'm an Apple guy, but on Spotify, you can go look up people's playlists.
I guess I actually don't do that much. But
Joshua could jump in here. He would know how to do that, right?
There is a way that people have seen my playlists, and maybe you have to follow me, or I have to follow you, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's Joshua. He's not going to come on. And
You can just put a link in there.
I'm not sure.
on the description for the playlist.
Yeah, but people can search a playlist or something like that. You can see someone else's if they make it public. I don't know.
Yeah, you should be able to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, whatever. It's called Sarah's song of the week.
Yes, it
So
is.
yeah, but anyway, there was some debate of whether we had already done this one, but
But we have not. We have done another song written by the same person.
I get it. I get it.
But-
and you don't know the name of that one.
I do.
What's that?
Rock of My Salvation.
Maybe you are right.
Okay. Anyway, this song is called Your Beloved by
Your Beloved.
Brent Helming.
Yes.
And it's an old Vineyard song. It's actually on a couple of different albums, and I listened to both of those versions a number of times today because I was trying to decide which one I wanted to tell people about. I mean, I'll tell you about both, but the one that I chose is on an album called Intimacy. Why We Worship, Vineyard, Why We Worship, Intimacy. And this album is all a little bit
Personal?
personal because we use many of these songs in our wedding.
Yes.
So
this
I'm
one
like,
came out soon or close to our wedding.
Yeah.
And it was so Why We Worship was a series. It's basically all acoustic.
Yeah.
And they took songs that are very intimate, not like what you're thinking, but intimate towards God, and all that. Anyways, a lot of those songs I liked, and we used it throughout our ceremony.
Yeah.
And so this album does have a bigger meaning for us personally.
does.
And this song was in our wedding, right?
I think so, but honestly, it's hard for me to remember which ones we picked. But anyway.
Yes, we did a lot of things in our wedding. I am sorry for everyone that attended.
Okay. Well, anyway. Well, this song is called Your Beloved, and
The unity candle is
it's
still
just-
burning.
it only has one verse and a chorus, so it's a rather simple song, but it's beautiful. And it says, Lord, it was you who created the heavens. Lord, it was your hand that put the stars in their place. Lord, it is your voice that commands the morning. Even oceans and their waves bow at your feet. And then it says, Lord, who am I compared to your glory? Lord, who am I compared to your majesty? Which I think is interesting because, we're just talking about he created the heavens, he put the stars. I mean, so we're talking about this big God who's done all these amazing things, and who am I? And so then it's going to
that is
answer.
the question,
That's
right.
the question. And then the chorus says, I am your beloved, your creation, and you love me as I am. You have called me chosen for your kingdom, unashamed to call me your own. I am your beloved.
Yep.
And so, that's all it is. And they just repeat it. But it's beautiful. And I just love that, who am I compared to God? I'm nothing. But yet he chose to love me. He chose to send his son to come and die for me. And so he saw me as something lovely and something worth giving his life for.
Right,
Not
absolutely.
me individually, but all of us.
That's a great. It's one of those that has held the test of time. Some, especially back then in the Vineyard ones, it was like they popped up and you're like, oh, I like it, and then I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
But this one has lasted and the test of time, and it is a great song, and it does remind you of that. I am not worthy of it, and yet a great big God that we have.
Yeah.
Stoops down, condescends to love us.
Right.
And that is amazing.
Yeah. And as I am, while we were yet sinners, he came and died. So it wasn't like we had, tried to do better and here we are trying to do good. It's like, no, we were a mess and yet he loved us and came and died.
Some of us were more of a mess, but yeah.
Anyway, so it's a beautiful song, and I would definitely recommend people checking it out. And
it's on that playlist. It will be on that playlist, but it is from the album, the Intimacy album. It's like a brownish album, and from Vineyard Why We Worship series.
Yeah.
If you look it up on YouTube or Spotify or wherever, go check it out. It's a great song.
The Mike Charleston Show is brought to you by Fellowship of Believers. For more information, go to our website at fellowshipofbelievers.org. Thank you for listening. We hope we have encouraged you to stand strong in the Lord Jesus and grow in Him.